The collision. The rain hammered against the cracked windshield of Maya's rusted Honda as she pulled into the gas station at 2 a.m. Her hands trembled against the steering wheel, not from the cold, but from the envelope of cash hidden beneath her seat. 3 months of tips from the diner, every dollar she could scrape together, all for him, all for the man who'd promised her a way out but delivered only deeper chains. She killed the engine and sat in the darkness, watching the fluorescent lights flicker over empty pumps. The bruise on her ribs ached with each breath, a reminder of what happened when she'd tried to say no last time. Tonight would be different. Tonight she was buying her freedom, even if it cost everything she had. The convenience store door chimed. As she entered, its harsh lighting making her pale skin look ghostly. Behind the bulletproof glass, a tired clerk barely glanced up from his phone. Maya grabbed a coffee she didn't want and approached the counter, her heart hammering against her chest. "Bathroom key?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The clerk slid a plastic key attached to a brick across the metal tray. Maya took it with shaking fingers and walked toward the back of the store, past aisles of stale snacks and energy drinks. The bathroom door was heavy, institutional, the kind that muffled screams. She locked herself inside and pulled out her phone. One text message waited. "Northwest corner, come alone." Maya stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. 26 years old, and she looked like she'd lived twice that. Dark circles under green eyes that had once sparkled with dreams of art school and gallery openings. Now those same eyes held only calculation and fear. A knock echoed through the small space. 3 short raps, pause, 2 more. The signal. Maya unlocked the door to find a man in his 30s, tall and lean with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the hardness in his jaw or the scar along his left temple. "You're not who I expected," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. "Neither are you." She studied his face, noting the way his gaze lingered on her bruised wrist. "Are you Alexei?" "Depends who's asking." His eyes never left hers. "You have something for me?" Maya hesitated. Everything about this felt wrong. Alexei was supposed to be older, cruder, with gold teeth and cheap cologne. This man looked like he belonged in boardrooms, not back-alley deals. "The envelope," she said finally. "But first I need to know you can deliver what you promised." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. "And what exactly did I promise you?" The question hit her like ice water. Maya's blood turned cold as realization crept in. This wasn't Alexei. This was someone else entirely, someone who'd been watching, waiting. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who knows exactly who you really are, Maya Chen." The fake name she'd been using for 6 months. The identity she'd crafted to disappear. He knew it was false, which meant he knew everything else too. "You're not here for the money," she said, backing against the sink. "No." He pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun, but worse. A photograph. Maya's heart stopped as she recognized her own face. Younger, laughing, standing next to a man whose death had changed everything. "I'm here for the truth about what really happened to my brother." Maya's knees nearly buckled as she stared at the photograph. Daniel's arm was around her shoulders, both of them grinning at some long-forgotten joke. She remembered that day, the way the sun had felt on her skin, how safe she'd felt in his embrace, before everything went to hell. "Daniel was your brother?" The words came out as a whisper. The man's jaw tightened. "Victor Kozlov, and you're going to tell me exactly how he died." Victor. She should have recognized the resemblance, the same sharp cheekbones, the same intense stare. But where Daniel had been warm and gentle, Victor radiated controlled violence. "I don't know what you think happened, but..." I think you killed him. Victor stepped closer, backing her against the bathroom wall. The police said it was a robbery. Gone wrong, but Daniel never carried cash, never wore expensive jewelry, so why would someone shoot him? Maya's throat constricted. The truth sat heavy in her chest like a stone, 2 years of guilt and sleepless nights condensed into this moment. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said finally. Victor's eyes went deadly still. Tell me. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across his face. Maya closed her eyes and let the memory surface, the one she'd buried, so deep it felt like someone else's life. I was in debt, bad debt to bad people. They said they'd kill me if I didn't pay. So She opened her eyes, meeting his stare. I told them about Daniel, about his art collection, the paintings in his apartment. I gave them his address. Victor's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Maya could see the effort it took him not to put them around her throat. You set him up to be robbed. They said no one would get hurt. They said they'd wait until he was gone, just take the paintings and leave. But Daniel came home early that night. He wasn't supposed to be there. The words tumbled out now, 2 years of suppressed guilt spilling like blood from an opened vein. He fought them. Of course he fought them. He was so goddamn noble. They panicked, and one of them pulled a gun. Tears burned her eyes. I loved him, Victor. I never meant for him to die. Victor was silent for a long moment, studying her face with the intensity of a predator deciding whether to strike. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Who were they? The men you sent to kill my brother. I didn't send them to kill anyone. His hand slammed against the wall beside her head. Names. Maya flinched but held his gaze. Alexei Petrov, the man I was supposed to meet tonight, and Marcus Webb, his partner. Where are they now? I don't know about Marcus, but Alexei. She gestured toward her phone. He's still out there in the parking lot, waiting for me to bring him the money. Victor pulled back slightly, and Maya saw something shift in his expression. The raw fury was still there, but underneath it was something else. Calculation. How much money? 15,000. Everything I had. It was supposed to buy my way out of the city, away from him. She laughed bitterly. Turns out you can't run from what you've done. Victor studied her for another moment, then pulled out his own phone. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. What are you doing? Calling some friends. He looked up at her. You're going to help me find the men who killed Daniel. What? No, I can't. If Alexei sees you with me, then he'll die tonight instead of tomorrow. Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, terrifying in its certainty. Your choice, Maya. Help me get justice for my brother, or I'll make sure Alexei knows exactly who sent those men to his apartment 2 years ago. The threat hit her like a physical blow. If Alexei learned she was responsible for his partner's death, there would be nowhere in the world she could hide. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. Victor pocketed his phone. Finally, outside, a car door slammed. Through the small bathroom window, Maya could see a figure moving between the gas pumps, checking his watch. Alexei, growing impatient. He's armed, she said quietly. And he's not alone. There's another car, black sedan, parked across the street. Victor smiled, and for the first time, Maya saw the family resemblance to Daniel. But where her dead lover's smile had been warm, Victor's was ice-cold promise of violence. Good. I was hoping this wouldn't be too easy. The next 48 hours blurred together like frames from a fever dream. Victor's friends turned out to be a network of contacts that operated in the shadows between legal and lethal. Maya found herself pulled into a world she'd only glimpsed at its edges, where information was currency and violence was just another business transaction. they tracked Marcus Webb to a warehouse in the industrial district. Maya waited in Victor's black Mercedes while he disappeared inside with two men whose names she never learned. 20 minutes later, he returned alone, blood on his knuckles and an address written on a scrap of paper. Alexei's got a place in the hills, Victor said, starting the engine. Fortified, security cameras, armed guards. He's been expecting trouble. From the police? From me. Victor pulled into traffic, his movements precise and controlled. I've been hunting him for 2 years, Maya, getting close, then watching him slip away. You're the missing piece I needed. Maya studied his profile in the dashboard light. What happened to Marcus? He won't be a problem anymore. The casual way he said it sent ice through her veins. She thought she understood violence, living on the edges of Alexei's world, but Victor operated on a different level entirely. Cold, methodical, efficient. You're not just Daniel's brother, she realized. You're something else. Victor glanced at her. What do you think I am? I think you're exactly the kind of man Daniel was trying to get away from. The words hit their mark. Victor's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and for a moment, Maya saw something vulnerable beneath the controlled facade. Daniel was trying to save you, he said finally. That's what he did, collected broken things and tried to put them back together. But he never understood that some things are too far gone. They drove in silence through the winding roads toward Alexei's compound. Maya's phone buzzed with increasingly agitated messages. Where was she? Did she have his money? He was losing patience. He'll be suspicious if I don't show up soon, Maya said. You're going to show up. Victor pulled off the main road onto a dirt track that led up into the hills. Just not alone. The plan was simple in concept, suicidal in execution. Maya would approach the compound as planned, carrying the envelope of cash. Victor and his team would use her arrival as a distraction to breach the perimeter. Once inside, they'd extract information about Daniel's murder, then decide what justice looked like. And if something goes wrong, Maya asked as they prepared to separate. Victor handed her a small device that looked like a panic button. Press this, and we come in shooting. What if you don't make it out? He studied her face in the moonlight filtering through the trees. Then you'll finally be free. Of all of us. Maya pocketed the device and started walking toward the lights visible through the trees. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but not from fear. Something had shifted between her and Victor over the past 2 days. The hatred was still there, the guilt and grief, but underneath it was something else. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. They were both broken people, shaped by violence and loss. The difference was that Victor had learned to wield his damage like a weapon, while Maya had simply learned to endure it. The compound's gates stood open, as if Alexei was expecting her. Security lights blazed down from mounted towers, turning the courtyard into a stage. Maya walked forward, the envelope heavy in her hands, acutely aware that snipers could be watching from the darkened windows of the main house. Alexei emerged from the shadows, flanked by 2 men with assault rifles. He looked older than she remembered, grayer, with the paranoid eyes of someone who'd been running for too long. You're late, he said. Traffic. Maya held up the envelope. It's all here. 15,000, just like we agreed. Alexei gestured to one of his men, who approached to take the money. As he reached for it, Maya saw movement in her peripheral vision, shadows detaching from shadows, flowing like water across the compound's perimeter. You know, Alexei said conversationally, I've been thinking about our arrangement, about why someone would pay so much to disappear. He smiled, showing gold teeth. And I realized you must have done something very bad to be worth so much to someone. Maya's blood turned cold. What are you talking about? Viktor Kozlov. He's been asking questions about you, offering rewards. very substantial rewards. Alexei's smile widened. I think 15,000 is no longer enough to buy your freedom. The trap closed around her like a fist. This had never been about helping her escape. It had been about drawing Victor out, using her as bait. But as armed men emerged from concealment surrounding her, Maya realized she wasn't afraid. She pressed the panic button in her pocket and waited for the violence to begin. You made one. Mistake, Alexei, she said as chaos erupted around them. What's that? You assumed Victor was coming here to save me. Maya smiled as gunfire erupted from the darkness. He's not here for me at all. He's here for you. The Betrayal. The firefight lasted 12 minutes. Maya counted every second while lying flat against the concrete courtyard, automatic weapons chattering in the darkness around her. When the shooting finally stopped, Victor emerged from the smoke like something out of a nightmare, his clothes torn and bloodied, but his eyes still burning with purpose. Alexei knelt in the center of the courtyard, hands zip-tied behind his back, his gold teeth now red with blood. Victor's men had cleared the compound with ruthless efficiency, leaving bodies scattered like broken dolls across the manicured lawn. It's over, Victor said, approaching Alexei with predatory calm. No more running. But as Maya watched Victor circle his prey, something nagged at her. The way Alexei had smiled when he mentioned Victor's name. The casual confidence of a man who'd set a trap, not walked into one. Daniel fought back, Victor continued, pulling out a knife. Did you know that? My little brother, who wouldn't hurt a fly, fought 3 armed men because he was trying to protect something he loved. Victor, Maya called out, something's wrong. He ignored her, focused entirely on Alexei. I want you to look at her while you tell me exactly how you killed him. Alexei raised his head, blood trickling from his split lip. When he smiled, Maya's heart stopped. You want to know how Daniel died? Alexei's voice was thick but clear. Ask her. She was there. Victor went very still. What? She didn't just give us the address. Alexei's eyes found Maya's across the courtyard. She came with us, guided us through the building, told us which apartment, even gave us the spare key. Maya felt the world tilt sideways. That's not true. She waited in the car while we went up. But when your brother started fighting, when he recognized her, voice through the door. Alexei laughed, a wet, horrible sound. She came up to calm him down. You're lying. But Maya could see the doubt creeping into Victor's eyes. Daniel opened the door because he heard her voice, because he trusted her. Alexei spat blood. She held his hand while I put the bullet in his chest. The memory crashed over Maya like a wave, the pieces she'd buried so deep she'd convinced herself they weren't real. Daniel's confused eyes when he saw her standing behind the armed men. The way he'd said her name, not angry, but heartbroken. The warmth of his hand in hers as life drained out of him. Maya. Victor's voice was barely a whisper. She looked up to find him staring at her, the knife forgotten in his hand. All the careful control he'd maintained was cracking, revealing the raw grief underneath. I tried to stop them, she said, but the words sounded hollow even to her. When he started fighting, I tried to make them leave. But you didn't call the police. You didn't scream for help. Victor took a step toward her. You watched him die. I was afraid. The truth tasted like bile. They said they'd kill me too if I tried anything. So you let them kill the man you claim to love instead. Maya had no answer for that. She'd spent 2 years telling herself she was a victim, that she'd been coerced, that she'd had no choice. But looking into Victor's eyes, she saw the truth reflected back at her. She'd chosen her own life over Daniel's. When the moment came to be brave, to sacrifice herself for someone she loved, she'd chosen to live with the guilt instead. I'm sorry, she whispered. Victor studied her face for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was empty of all emotion. So am I. He turned back to Alexei, but the moment of distraction had been enough. The Russian had worked one hand free from his restraints and pulled a concealed pistol from an ankle holster. Maya saw the glint of metal, saw Alexei's finger tighten on the trigger. Without thinking, she threw herself forward. The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the confined space, echoing off the compound walls like thunder. Maya felt the bullet tear through her shoulder, spinning her around as she crashed into Victor. They both went down hard, Victor's knife skittering across the concrete. Alexei struggled to his feet, the pistol trained on them both. Touching, he said, the whore finally grows a conscience. Maya pressed her hand against her shoulder, blood seeping through her fingers. The pain was sharp and immediate, but not as sharp as the look in Victor's eyes as he helped her sit up. Why? He asked. Maya looked at the man she'd helped destroy, the brother of the man she'd helped kill. 2 years too late, she finally had an answer. Because some things are worth dying for. Alexei raised the gun again, his finger tightening on the trigger. But before he could fire, Victor moved with liquid grace, his backup weapon appearing in his hand as if by magic. 2 shots, center mass, and Alexei collapsed backward onto the blood-stained concrete. In the sudden silence that followed, Maya could hear her own ragged breathing, the distant sound of sirens approaching. Victor's men were already disappearing into the darkness, leaving no trace they'd ever been there. We need to go, Victor said, but he made no move to leave. Maya nodded, struggling to stand. The world spun around her, black spots dancing at the edges of her vision. She was losing too much blood. Victor, she caught his arm as he helped her up. The men Daniel was trying to save me from, they weren't just criminals. He went very still. What do you mean? The debt I owed. It wasn't to loan sharks or drug dealers. Maya met his eyes, knowing this might be the last truth she ever told. It was to your father. The safe house was a converted warehouse in the docks district, the kind of place that existed between the cracks of the official world. Maya lay on a narrow bed while a man who claimed to be a doctor but asked no questions stitched her shoulder, with practiced efficiency. Victor sat across the room, cleaning his weapons with mechanical precision. He hadn't spoken since her revelation about his father, but Maya could feel the weight of his thoughts pressing against the silence. How much did you owe him? He asked finally. 50,000. Maya winced as the needle pulled through her skin. My gallery was failing. I needed capital, and banks don't loan money to broke artists with no collateral. So you went to Dmitry Kozlov instead. I didn't know who he was at first, just a businessman who specialized in private loans. She laughed bitterly. By the time I learned the truth, it was too late. The doctor finished his work and packed away his supplies. Victor pressed a roll of cash into his hand, and the man disappeared into the night without a word. Daniel knew, Victor said once they were alone, about the debt, about our father. Maya nodded. He was trying to help me pay it off. That's why he had those paintings in his apartment, why he was liquidating his collection. He thought if I could clear the debt, I could start over somewhere else. Noble fool. But there was no heat in Victor's voice, only grief. He never understood that our father doesn't forgive debts. He collects them. Daniel was nothing like you or your father. No. Victor set down his gun and looked at her directly for the first time since the compound. He was better than both of us. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they wanted to cross. Maya studied Victor's face, noting the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders had lost their rigid set. What happens now? She asked. Now you disappear, for real this time. Victor pulled out a passport and a thick envelope. New identity, clean papers, enough money to start over anywhere you want. Maya stared at the documents. Why would you help me? Because Daniel would have wanted me to. She picked up the passport, flipping through pages that showed her face but a stranger's. Name, Sarah Mitchell. Age 28, born in Seattle. No criminal record, no debts to dangerous men. And you? What will you do? Victor was quiet for a long moment. There's still my father to deal with. The organization he built, the people he hurt. Someone has to answer for all of it. That's not your responsibility. Isn't it? Victor's smile was sharp as broken glass. I'm his son. His legacy. His sins are mine to carry. Maya set the passport aside and stood, her shoulder protesting the movement. She crossed the room to where Victor sat, close enough to see the pain he kept hidden behind his controlled facade. Daniel chose to love me despite what I'd done, she said quietly. Maybe you can choose something different than revenge. And what would that be? Maya reached out, touching his cheek with trembling fingers. Forgiveness. Victor closed his eyes at her touch, and for a moment the mask slipped completely. Underneath the controlled killer was a man grieving his brother, carrying guilt and anger that threatened to consume him whole. I don't know how, he whispered. Neither do I. Maya leaned closer, her forehead touching his. But maybe we could figure it out together. They stayed like that for a long moment, two broken people finding something like peace in each other's brokenness. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility, oblivious to the small miracle happening in a forgotten warehouse. When Victor finally opened his eyes, Maya saw something new there. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. A crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. There's a place, he said. Small town in Montana, near the Canadian border. My mother used to talk about it before she died. Said it was where she wanted to retire, paint landscapes, and forget the world existed. Sounds peaceful. It is. Victor's hand covered hers. I bought a house there years ago. Never visited it, but I kept paying the taxes, kept it maintained, like I was saving it for something. Maya smiled, understanding. For someone to forgive. For someone to forgive, and someone to forgive with. The decision was made without words, in the space between heartbeats where possibility becomes reality. They would go together, two damaged souls seeking redemption in a place where the past couldn't follow. Victor made the arrangements with the same efficiency he'd brought to hunting his brother's killers. Within hours, they were in a car heading north, leaving behind the city and all its ghosts. As they drove through the night, Maya watched Victor's profile in the dashboard light. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. The weight of vengeance was lifting, replaced by something infinitely more dangerous and precious. Hope. Do you think Daniel would forgive us? She asked as dawn broke over the mountains. Victor considered this, his hands steady on the wheel. I think Daniel would want us to forgive ourselves. Maya settled back in her seat, her hand finding his across the console. Behind them, the sun rose over a world full of second chances and new beginnings. Ahead lay a small town where broken things could be mended, where love could grow in the space between grief and grace. They drove toward it together, carrying their ghosts, but no longer haunted by them. In the distance, mountains touched the sky like promises waiting to be kept. The end.